So many people have asked me why I built an Australian outback home in the middle of Sonoma County, California. Much more than lumber and corrugated iron is an homage to the time I spent in Australia and the indelible mark it made on my life. The first time I flew into the Melbourne airport, I had the overwhelming feeling that I had been here before. Everywhere I looked, I saw family resemblances. There was my Uncle Frank and my Irish grandmother, Dolly Brannigan. And there were traces of my paternal family, my ancestors, my roots. On my second trip to Australia, I made a 5,000-mile round trip from Melbourne to Perth by motorcycle, riding alone through a country I knew nothing about. It was a risky journey, but it made perfect sense to me. My marriage of 23 years was falling apart. My own dreams were left behind, and my tenuous faith in the future had completely vanished. I was lost, untethered, scared. That ride across the boundless outback was just what was needed. The first stunning view from the Pitchy Ritchie Pass showed me the endless road ahead and challenged my decision to embark on such an arduous undertaking. Along the way, there were sights I had never seen before. Road trains, a Coca-Cola bottle tree, kangaroos, and days of 360-degree horizons. An encounter with the Australian bite took me to the very edge of the earth, with nothing but ocean stretching between me and Antarctica. Abandoned immigrant homesteads with their unique architecture captured my imagination and left a lasting impression on me. Sometimes what I encountered was pure magic. Like the day I joined with 3 other bikers and rode into the worst storm any of us had ever faced. A torrent of water that came at us was terrifying. Within minutes, we were soaked to the skin, and I was deeply grateful not to be alone. As we emerged from the storm, the sun broke through a thin slit in the clouds and sent a shimmering curtain of silver over the dark landscape. It was the first of 2 silver sunsets I would encounter. I was becoming more and more comfortable with the challenge that scared me. Soaking up the warmth of your sun and your people reawakened all my senses. I came to you, Australia, on a journey of self-discovery and learned what it means to be truly alive. After 2 decades of dividing my time between San Francisco and Australia, I realized my bi-hemispheric lifestyle would eventually come to an end. While searching for a wedding venue for my daughter, we drove through the Valley of the Moon, about an hour outside of San Francisco. It encompasses Sonoma County and the surrounding area. What I liked about the setting was that it didn't take itself too seriously. and had an eclectic mix of old and new. That's when I stumbled upon the little town of Glen Ellen. Right away, I would sense it was the kind of place where you could open your heart and breathe deeply. It reminded me of the small towns that have been havens for me in South Australia. Immediately, I asked my realtor to begin looking for a property in Sonoma County. After 6 or 7 visits, I finally landed on the Thompson property. I saw the majestic oak trees and learned that the property fronted the Sonoma Creek, and I thought, this is it. Originally, this land was the site of a native village inhabited by the Wapo people and was a source of water for the whole valley. After the Western expansion, William Redwood Thompson arrived in Glen Ellen on horseback from Kentucky in 1852. Initially, Thompson worked for General Mariano Vallejo, the powerful Californian statesman and founder of the town of Sonoma. The word Sonoma comes from the Wapo term meaning village. Thompson drove an ox team for Vallejo, delivering fresh-cut lumber to the boats on their way across the bay to build Gold Rush San Francisco. Thompson married 17-year-old Sophronia Shin, but within 2 years, she and their infant daughter died of typhus. Thompson went on to marry her sister Fredonia, and together they produced 8 children. With the booming gold rush, many settlers have begun to move into the area in search of prosperity and a better life. As a result, land disputes became commonplace. Thompson's claim to this mountain, like that of many migrants to the region, was challenged by Vallejo, who had been granted the land by the Mexican government. But with the loss of the Mexican-American War, and with California now under the jurisdiction of the United States, Thompson and many of the other American settlers' claims were upheld by the favorable court system. The first house Thompson built remains standing today. The second house was built by his son George in 1906 on the property I purchased. When I took ownership in June of 2000, the original George Thompson house was in disrepair and obviously couldn't be salvaged. It was going to have to be torn down and a new home built in its place. I bought a trailer so I could live on the grounds and be immersed in the environment. The first project was to build some stairs to the creek. Over the next year, my vision for the property crystallized. This would be a compound with several buildings to house all the furnishings and art I had collected over the past 2 decades, helping to ease the pain of my leaving Australia. This meant an Australian aesthetic needed to be reflected in the design.
Our next category is Best Renovation or Addition, and here's the winner, Michael Rigg of Urban Spaces.
Immediately, I contacted my friend, Australian architect Michael Rigg. We had renovated 2 homes together during my time in Australia.
I met Linda in Melbourne. She was mad about BMW motorbikes. I owned a BMW at the time, little BMW. We talked about building. We talked about her love of art, her respect of art. She already was an avid collector of Australian art. We were on the same wavelengths in that regard. She loved Australian wine, loved Australian food. We had lots of trips. It was good fun and a very enjoyable, rich relationship. I thought she was refreshing, robust and committed. For an architect, that's impressive and alluring to see someone involved in these things and take up ideas, take up challenges and make them work. My role is to take her on that journey, to give her choices. And it's that journey that's important, and my role is facilitating that in a creative way. When she couldn't live in Australia and have this dual hemisphere lifestyle, it was at that stage she thought, well, I really should think about planning a house in America, and a house that incorporated the art collection.
Long before my love of motorcycles in Australia, a passion for art had been driving me. I grew up in Union City, New Jersey. From my father, I inherited an innate ability to draw, starting with simple things like copying cartoon characters and moving on to sketching fashion models from the Sunday papers. One day I mentioned to my father I might like to attend the Fashion Institute. He responded with a stern warning. "That's a man's world. Don't even think about it." Coming from the man I most revered, those words were enough to shut me down. Instead of pursuing my art, I did what good little girls do. Studied nursing, got married, and became a mother. There's something insidious about art. You can stop pursuing it, but it won't ever stop pursuing you. One of the buildings I wanted to create was a tower, a structure designed purely for decorative purposes, often referred to as a folly in the British lexicon. This was where I tried my hand at being an architect, roughly sketching an idea based on a photo of a writer's building that was featured in the New York Times. I wanted to create a visual edge, marking where the property falls away to the creek. This is where I would place my art studio. The tower, at 14 feet square, is a true outbuilding, reminiscent of the water towers on local ranches. By day, the second floor sliding glass doors and the observation balcony reach out and blend into nature. At night, lit from within, it becomes a glowing lantern at the edge of a dark abyss.
Linda fell in love with the colours of Australia, the rich reds of the earth, the rich reds of the rocks, the eroded nature of Australia. What we came up with was an Australian village more than a house. Buildings being completely different in assorted locations in the landscape.
The concept of houses being a group of houses, being sheds and outbuildings, that was very much an Australian thing. The garage was one of the first structures I built in Glen Ellen. It was inspired by the old ruins I saw near the town of Hawker in the South Australia bush. Before my motorcycle journey, the only thing I knew about you, Australia, is that you had kangaroos. It's amazing how little Americans know about your history. That the Aboriginal people have lived on your land for more than 50,000 years. And that the first Europeans were actually convicts sent from England in 1788 to a newly established penal colony.
In South Australia, it's a hard life. And certainly in the 19th century, an extremely hard life.
I can only imagine those families landing on your shore with so few of the skills needed to start a settlement. What struggles and hardships they must have endured.
People made do. There's something beautiful about making do. The creative approach to making do. There's something wonderful about that. It's everywhere you look in rural South Australia that aspect of making do is wonderful.
Every time I look at my garage, I'm reminded of those felons and immigrants who made do with what they had and who had made incredibly durable and beautiful structures. I found out that the masonry blocks around the corners were called quoins. They were brought to Australia by the English and German immigrants who began arriving in the late 1700s.
In South Australia, we have the influence of German migration and the use of solid stone structures, the use of coins on the edging. Those sort of things come from Georgian architecture, 17th, 18th century buildings in England.
Their stone and brick architecture was an incredible combination of rough and refined, a sophisticated example of making do with the materials readily available. The next structure I built on my property was the guest house. There's something magical about linking the present to the past, and when I was designing the guest house, I imagined a pioneer family constructing their first home. It would be a make-do structure incorporating a combination of local and relatively cheap materials. I knew that the roof had to be made of corrugated iron. It made sense that settlers would want to use sheets of this since wood was scarce. The first floor of the guest house consists of a living room, a kitchen, and a small master bedroom with an ensuite bathroom that holds the sweet claw-footed tub we saved from the old house. Just off the bedroom is a large bathtub adapted from animal trough. A vaulted roof allows for a staircase leading up to a cozy double bunk bedroom. I began to notice valuable space was being wasted. This allowed me to create unexpected, efficient storage opportunities. The 4 windows that once flanked the chimney of the original Thompson home now serve as bedside nooks. Since it gets quite hot up here in Sonoma, I knew that I wanted the house to have a sleep out. I still remember the first time I heard an Aussie use that term for an enclosed veranda. Brilliant. But perhaps my favorite feature, just outside the guest house, is a big rusty water tank. Since the unsightly well water pump could not be removed, I thought, why not cover it with a structure easily found in the outback? Its texture, color, imperfections, and strange beauty make it look like it's always been there. From the very first trip I took across the land of Oz, I was captivated by your architecture.
The architecture of South Australia is robust. It's built to last. It's built to be very permanent. The saltbox design of Australian houses, that's a Georgian tradition.
Seeing all these buildings planted a seed in my mind for the kind of main house I would someday build to remind me of you, Australia. I wanted the house to look and feel like you, all of you. I knew that the main house would have a high pyramid roof made of corrugated iron.
Corrugated iron is really part of the Australian landscape. It has been used since the settlement of Australia at the end of the 18th century.
I envisioned a wraparound veranda set on top of 6 large water tanks, inspired by an artist's house I saw just outside the Healesville Sanctuary. In addition to being big and beautiful, they're also functional, holding 30,000 gallons of water in case one of our wildfires threatens the property.
The veranda is traditional as a means of controlling the climate. The veranda is something that came from colonial India. A steep roof is to draw air up into the roof. It's a simple Venturi design with open, large French doors at ground level. To walk through the front door, you have a sense of the structure of the house, the sense of theatre and drama about all that. The symmetry of the steps, the little tiny space upstairs. There's gum leaves, gum trees everywhere.
I wanted to see touches of Australia in every room. The light fixture was made from a eucalyptus tree with gum nut-shaped detail, and the tables were handmade by an Australian designer.
The hierarchy of the room is very much an Australian thing. There's very much formal rooms and the informal rooms.
The kitchen was inspired by memories from my childhood. The center island was designed to be just like my grandmother's big table in the center of her kitchen.
It's very characteristic of a country kitchen.
It was designed to look like pieces had been acquired over time with different materials and counter heights.
The higgledy-piggledy kitchen of assorted and varied bits all cobbled together, but with an aesthetic eye, with some function.
The most joyful part of creating Glen Ellen was working with other artists, finding exactly the right person to fulfill my vision. Michael Rigg and I were always on the hunt for unique talents. The great room is anchored by a large stone fireplace. The walls are covered in paneling reminiscent of Victorian design, and the room has some of my favorite artwork and furniture. Some pieces I brought back with me and others I designed, including the rug, which evokes the terrain of your outback. As a child, we always had to clean up our games and put everything away. I designed these two special nooks so that puzzles and games could be left out and always ready to play. The entryway of the main house is a showcase for many of the artworks I collected. I even found one piece while riding through the outback. I knew I had to have it, so I strapped it to my motorcycle and kept going. The eucalyptus theme was carried into the billiard room, where the design represents a beloved tree I planted in Melbourne but couldn't bring back to California with me. These walls also remind me of the first time I visited your Parliament building in Canberra, where I was struck by the beautiful wood inlay they call marquetry in Australia. I loved it so much that I hired the same artists and craftsmen to design the panels for this room. Every space, every image is a testament to you, Australia, to your people, and to the rich connections you have maintained with your past. Overlooking the main room is the loft. It's a great place to work in or to just hang out and relax. The master bedroom is a sanctuary where I am surrounded by art that constantly reminds me of you, Australia, your past and your present. The stunning painting of Hanging Rock, the work of a brilliant contemporary sculptor, and this antique chest of drawers handmade in the 1800s. I love the way the light filters in through the delicate curtains with their hand-painted eucalyptus leaves. And my favorite feature of all, the clear-story windows that allow me to lie in bed and look up at the sky. Over the years, people have asked why I gave up making art. What they consider art was painting and drawing. What they failed to see was that my artistic vision was three-dimensional and was expressed in the creation of spaces that encompass people's lives. From the moment the house was completed, I felt it was magical. That feeling was proven true in a frightening way on October 9th of 2017.
Alan, for the last couple of days, this part of Glen Ellen has been in a smoky haze. You can see the awesome size of the fire. Flames are ripping through the trees, consuming the hillside.
I was in San Francisco that Sunday evening when I noticed smoke in the air. I called to my neighbor in Glen Ellen, confirmed my worst fears. "Don't come back," she said. "We've all been ordered to evacuate." My heart dropped. All I could do was watch the news and wait.
It is devastating and heartbreaking out here to see these images. The damage is so bad you can't even tell if you are looking at one or several homes.
These images reinforce my worst fears. When I finally returned, I could see that my neighbors had lost everything. Yet only a quarter mile down the road was my property, completely untouched. The fire department didn't even have to use our water tanks. 100 yards away, on the other side of the creek, the line of fire had just stopped. Was it luck? Fate? Good planning? The galvanized roofs that resisted sparks? Who knows? Whatever the reason, we were spared. Now every day I spend here is a gift. A gift you gave me, Australia. A gift I now share with the rest of the world. With all my love, Linda.